Welcome to the Explainer. So you've got your sights set on securing a spot at the University of Larkano for the 2026 academic year. Honestly, that's a fantastic goal. But look, we all know navigating university admissions can feel, well, a bit like trying to solve a giant puzzle without the picture on the box, right? That is exactly why we are here today. I'm going to be your guide, and we're going to take all of that heavy, kind of intimidating bureaucracy and break it down into a simple, highly visual, step-by-step explainer. We'll be looking closely at the exact rules and data straight from the university's official policy, so you'll know absolutely everything you need to do.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our agenda for today. Checking your eligibility, the online application process, the pre-admission test, navigating fees and refunds, and finally, how seats are actually allocated.
All right, Section 1, checking your eligibility. Before you even think about filling out a single form or paying any fees, we've got to clear the most critical gatekeeping hurdle. Notice the really clear distinction the university makes here between its faculties. For most degree programs, whether you're looking at natural sciences, social sciences, agriculture, or commerce, the baseline is an intermediate exam score of at least 50%. Pretty standard. But if you are aiming for the Faculty of Engineering, the standard is significantly higher. You literally must hold an intermediate pre-engineering, pre-medical certificate, or a DAE with a strict minimum of 60% marks. That 10% difference, it's a hard line in the sand, guys.
Now, before we go any further, I kind of need to put on my mentor hat for a quick second. The university has an absolute zero-tolerance policy for fraudulent or forged documents. No exceptions. If you misrepresent yourself, the consequences are incredibly severe. We're not just talking about immediate cancellation of your admission or even your degree later on. You will also forfeit all fees paid to the university and, get this, you'll be completely debarred from future admissions for 3 whole years. It is simply not worth the risk. Always, always be perfectly honest on your application.
So, the crucial point is calculating your exact standing. And there's a super specific rule you absolutely must keep in mind, especially if you aren't fresh out of high school. If you passed your intermediate exams before 2026, say anywhere between 2022 and 2025, the university is going to deduct exactly 1% from your aggregate marks for your final merit calculation. You really need to factor this deduction in early on so you can accurately predict where you stand against the competition.
Moving right along to Section 2, the online application process.
Assuming you meet all those baseline requirements, you are officially eligible to tackle the entirely online application process. It basically unfolds in 6 clear steps. First up, you'll register an account and fill in your personal details. Next, get that scanner ready because you'll need to upload image formats of your CNIC, domicile, and Form C. Once your academic history is all logged in, you'll select your preferred degree programs, and finally, finish up by generating your processing fee challan. Just remember, once you hit submit on that final application, that's it, no further changes can be made.
Let's actually pause and talk about Step 5 for a second, because this is where a bit of strategy comes into play. When you're selecting your desired degree programs, you are required to choose a minimum of 5 preferences, but the maximum number of programs you can apply for, it's 17. Honestly, you should absolutely utilize this feature. You can reorder these preferences before your final submission, so obviously put your absolute dream faculty at number 1, but definitely use those other 16 slots as your safety nets.
And to officially wrap up this application, you've got to clear the processing fee, which is exactly 4,000 Pakistani rupees. Keep in mind, this fee is entirely non-refundable. You can pay this either by generating an online challan or just by using the Allied Bank Limited mobile app. Whichever route you choose, just make sure you take a really clear, scanned image of the paid receipt and upload it to the portal before the expiry date.
All right, gear up for Section 3, the pre-admission test.
Welcome to the boss fight of your application journey. Unless you're applying as a foreign overseas student or an armed forces nominee, you are going to have to take this exam. The test is a 60-minute sprint consisting of 100 questions. As you'll see, it's evenly divided into 4 quarters, which makes it a perfectly balanced gauntlet. You've got 25 marks dedicated to physics, 25 to chemistry, 25 to either biology or math depending on your specific track, and the final 25 marks testing a mix of English, general knowledge, and computer skills.
But listen closely, because here is the most critical number on this entire test: 33%. If you score less than 33 out of 100, you are instantly disqualified. Period. It's an absolute fail condition. It literally does not matter if you were the top student in your high school or if your intermediate marks were totally flawless. If you score a 32% on this pre-admission test, your journey at the University of Larkano ends right there. No exceptions.
Now, assuming you do clear that 33% hurdle, how is your final rank actually decided? Well, the university calculates what they call a composite percentage number. Basically, your final merit isn't just based on that entry test. It's actually a mathematical combination of your past academic performance and the entry test, using specific weightage multipliers of 0.1, 0.5, and 0.4. This is their way of ensuring that a well-rounded academic history is rewarded right alongside a really strong performance on the pre-admission exam.
Let's talk money. Section 4, Navigating Fees and Refunds.
So, there are two parallel tracks for admission here, the standard merit track and the self-finance track. And the financial contrast between these two, it is massive. For example, if we look at civil engineering, a student admitted on standard open merit is going to pay just over 66,000 PKR for their first semester. But if you opt for the self-finance quota, which is basically a way to secure a seat if you don't quite make the open merit cutoff, that initial fee literally skyrockets to 800,000 PKR. That is a huge financial commitment, so you really need to weigh your options. Now, what happens if you pay your tuition, but then, for whatever reason, decide to withdraw? The university follows a very strict refund timeline set by the Higher Education Commission. Here's the deal. If you want a 100% full tuition refund, you absolutely must act within the first 7 days of classes commencing. If you wait until day 8 through 15, you're only entitled to a 50% refund. And if you wait until day 16 or later, the refund drops to absolute zero.
And a quick, really important note if you're applying under that expensive self-finance scheme we just discussed. I want you to hear this exact quote directly from the university's policy. There shall be no refund of self-finance fees after the admission process is over. That is a strict, completely unforgiving rule. If you are committing to self-finance, you have to be absolutely certain, because once that admission process concludes, that money is completely locked in.
And finally, Section 5, How Seats Are Allocated.
For candidates holding a SIND domicile, the competition is strictly regionalized. Basically, the university enforces a hard geographic split. 70% of the district quota seats are reserved exclusively for students from rural areas, while the remaining 30% are allocated to students from urban areas, which the Revenue Department defines as municipalities or corporations. The whole idea here is to ensure an equitable distribution of educational opportunities across the entire province.
Now, here is a highly specific procedural quirk you really need to remember. Let's say you get accepted into your fourth preference program, but you actually kind of like it and you want to stay there, rather than risking getting automatically upgraded to your first preference in a later merit list. To stop the system from doing that auto-upgrade, you must submit a physical, handwritten application to the Director of Admissions within exactly 7 days of that list being announced. I'm serious. If you miss that tiny window, you might lose the exact seat you wanted to keep.
Besides the standard geographic merit seats, there are a bunch of specialized quotas that provide alternative paths to entry. The university reserves specific seats for girls, for actual children or siblings of regular university employees, for sports standouts, minorities, and disabled candidates. There's also an armed forces quota in the mix, which is strictly split 70% for Army and GHQ nominees and 30% for Naval Headquarters nominees.
All right, we've unpacked the eligibility rules, mapped out the pre-admission test, clarified those steep financial commitments, and decoded the geographic quotas. The path through all this bureaucracy is finally clear. But honestly, securing a seat at the University of Larkano isn't just about checking boxes and filling out forms correctly. It's about proving you have the grit to survive a really competitive academic gauntlet. The rules are set, the portal is open, so the only question left is, do you have what it takes to beat the odds? Best of luck out there, and we'll see you next time on The Explainer.